All right, going to talk about Georgia quarterback Carson Beck. Talk about keys for success for Carson Beck against this Texas defense for this upcoming game, the SEC championship this upcoming week. And we got 4 keys that we're going to talk about for Carson Beck. Then we have maybe 5 or 6 clips of film of Beck demonstrating the keys we're about to talk about. But before we talk about Beck, before we talk about the keys and look at the film, let's talk about Texas defense for 1 to 2 minutes. Talk about what they did well against Beck in the first matchup and maybe what we can potentially expect, or when I say we, if you're a Georgia fan. So Texas defense is coming off an elite performance that the whole nation saw. One of the best defenses, if not the best defense in the nation. They're number 1 in the SEC in points per game, giving up only 11-something points per game. That's even with giving up 30 points to Georgia in the first matchup, but Texas turned the ball over 4 times, right, and put them in good position. And so they still only given up 11 points per game. Number 1 in passing defense and yards per game, at like 140-ish. Number 1 in the SEC in total yards per game, and in passing yards per game, right? So how are they able to have success against Carson Beck? It was kind of interesting because against Georgia the first time they played, according to PFF, they had 0 sacks. According to ESPN, they had 1 sack. Regardless, they didn't get a ton of pressure. Only 14 total pressures on Beck, but Beck still threw 3 interceptions. Beck still didn't have a good game. He still looked flustered, kind of still looked off. They only blitzed 27% of the time. My thought is, are they going to bring more? I'll get to that here in a second. Are they going to try to blitz more, or are they going to rely on their front 4 to try to get more pressure? What they did really well against Beck was confuse him pre-snap to post-snap, and they forced Beck to get rid of the ball quicker than he wanted to. So even if they didn't get pressure statistically, it still led to 3 turnovers. So Texas's defense still had a damn good game against Beck against Georgia last time they played. So if you're Georgia, if you're Carson Beck, how do you prepare? How do you respond to Texas's defense, who of course is trying to prepare and respond and game plan differently against you than they did on the first time? So Carson Beck was 23-41 for $175, 0 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions against Texas defense. So a key number 1, and he's done this a lot the past few games, is make contested throws or fit the ball into tight windows. Texas defense is number 1 in the SEC when it comes to interceptions. They have 18 interceptions. 3 of those interceptions coming against Carson Beck. They had 1 against Marcel Reed last week as well. 18 picks, so you're going to have to throw the ball into some tight space, some tight windows. They have good DBs. Probably 3 of those guys are getting drafted this year, right? If not this year, then next year, depending on who stays and who goes. So key number 1, make contested throws, fit the ball in the tight spaces. Don't expect wide open throws. If you get them, great. If not, make tough throws. Key number 2, be prepared for Texas to try to confuse you from pre-snap to post-snap, something they did last time they played, right? They didn't blitz a ton, but when they blitzed, it was strategic pressure, and Beck did not fare well against the blitz against Texas last time. He was only 4-12 against the blitz for 41 yards and an interception. And they were confusing him because even when they dropped 7 or 8, he was only 19-29 and had 2 interceptions whenever they weren't blitzing. So they were doing a good job just confusing Beck, forcing him to get rid of the ball. And the reason I talked about will they blitz more this game compared to last time they played him is because he didn't have a ton of success and didn't play very well against the blitz. But at the same time, their defensive strategy worked, right? So remains to be seen there. Only 12 of his 23 completions, 12 of Carson Beck's 23 completions against Texas the first game was behind line of scrimmage. So he only had 9 completions that were thrown beyond line of scrimmage last game. So that leads me to key number 3, downfield throws. Pushing the ball downfield, throwing 20-plus yard type throws. That is part of your game. It's part of your bread and butter. It's what you do really well. I'm not saying you want to risk it and push the ball downfield, but all his interceptions against Texas were like short to intermediate type throws, 10 to 15 yard type throws. So key number 3, push the ball downfield. You have 27 completions on the season where the ball is thrown 20 yards or more in the air. You have 11 touchdowns to only 1 interception on those type of throws. Against Texas, you only attempted 1 of those passes, and it was incomplete. I think it was dropped, if I'm not mistaken, but you were still 0 for 1 with only 1 attempt. You're tied for second in the SEC on those type of throws where the ball is thrown 20-plus yards downfield. You're tied for second in completions, and your PFF grade is tied for number 2 in the SEC with quarterbacks that have 10 or more of those type of completions. I think only DJ Lagway has a better rating according to PFF. All that tells me, take some shots downfield. Be strategic about it, but you want to take more than 1 attempt downfield. I think you're going to have to win this game, especially if Texas takes care of the ball, especially if Quinn Ewers and the offense is improved. I think you're going to have to hit on a deep ball or 2. Key number 4, avoid the snowball interception effect. Avoid kind of the disaster effects. Same key to Quinn Ewers for Texas. You want to avoid this from happening. Now, the past 3 games, he has 11 touchdowns to 0 interceptions the past 3 games. I know UMass was in there, but you still have that game against Georgia Tech, the game against Tennessee. You had some good opponents where you've been playing a lot better as of late. But every interception so far this season was in SEC play. Again, 12 picks. 3 games with 3 interceptions, 4 games of multi-interception games. So you just want to avoid that snowball effect. If you throw a pick, screw it, whatever. Bounce back from it. Avoid it happening again. So we'll go ahead and look at a few clips of Carson Beck again, just to recap these keys. Make contested throws, fit it into tight spaces. Key number 2: be prepared if Texas blitzes you, and be prepared if they drop 7 or 8. You don't want to be confused from pre-snap to post-snap. And then downfield throws, man, I think that's part of your game. I think Carson Beck is special at that. I think he can rip it downfield, especially in the middle of the field. I think you want to keep that in the game. You don't want to not throw it because of Texas's solid defense and their DBs. And key number 4, avoid the snowball effect. So we'll go ahead and look at a few of these clips. We got maybe 4 or 5 clips we'll look of Carson Beck. And if you're a Georgia fan, if this is your first time tuning in, we do a lot of SEC quarterback content. So please consider subscribing to the channel if you like this SEC type of quarterback content. So let's go ahead and check out Carson Beck's film. So like we said, we got 5 clips we're going to watch. And Georgia fans, this is your first time tuning in. This is broadcast footage, so I do apologize. We have to slow it down, but it does a good enough job getting the point across that we are trying to make. So first key for Carson Beck: fit the ball into a tight space, in a tight window, making contested throws. This is a touchdown against Georgia Tech. Seam route here, there's 4 defenders around him. He fits the ball into a really tight window, a really tough throw. I don't have the behind the center angle. You can really tell how tough that throw is, but the ball is about to come out now. He's throwing to this receiver for Georgia here. We have 2 defenders, another up top safety, another corner on this side that we can't see. It looks like an easier throw than it is from that angle, but he has to put enough juice on the ball to get it to his receiver before these DBs come. He also has to put enough height on the ball to get over these DBs here. Really tough throw, really impressive throw. So key number 1, fitting the ball into tight spaces and 2 small windows. We'll see a touchdown from Beck here also against Georgia Tech. Little back shoulder throw. Good coverage here. He's throwing it to the top of the screen. Good coverage, throwing your receiver open. Throw it to the green grass, throw to the outside. He's able to adjust, make a good throw, and a good catch on tight coverage. So that's key number 1. Make contested throws. Fit the ball into tight windows and tight spaces, especially against the DBs that Texas has. Okay, key number 2. Be prepared for the blitz or for the team or for Texas to drop 7 or 8. So here's an example against Tennessee. It's a touchdown. Tennessee's only bringing 4. They're dropping 7. Beck's able to decipher the defense. I thought Beck played a really good game against Tennessee. Throws a rocket downfield for a touchdown, but a good example of Beck going through progressions, seeing one thing, going through his read and throwing a touchdown when the defense is dropping 7 or 8, and then also be able to perform and be successful against the blitz. So here's Tennessee blitzing. Again, we talked about Beck was only 4-12 for 41 yards and an interception against the blitz against Texas. They blitz here, sets up open space. It helps that you get in the run game going. It helps that little play action to get defenders out of position. But I think it's important. I think it's a good example of Beck having success against the blitz. Because even though Texas only blitzed, 20-something% of Beck's dropbacks, they were still successful. It was strategic blitzing, and it led to definitely some interceptions, right? So be successful against the blitz, be successful when they drop 7 or 8. In the last clip that we'll watch, and this is, again, I think what makes Beck special once he gets into rhythm is just ripping the ball downfield. These are your type of throws. Balls thrown 20-plus yards or more downfield, some downfield throws. He only had 1 attempt against Texas on downfield throws where the ball was thrown 20 yards or more there. Here's one that's maybe 21 yards or something. Regardless, it's right at that number that we want to see. You don't have to rip it downfield. You don't have to do it on every single drive, but I think you got to do it more than one time during the game to win. Again, you are second in the SEC in those type of throws. Completion-wise, you're second in the PFF grade. With quarterbacks that have 10 or more completions on those type of throws, I think you utilize it to your advantage while still taking care of the football. So, Georgia fans, I do want to hear from you. What are your thoughts? What do you want to see from Carson Beck? What do you think the keys are for success? Again, just to recap ours, it's fitting the ball in the tight spaces, tight windows, making tough throws, do well against the blitz, and do well when they drop 7 or 8, and make downfield throws like the throws we are just watching, and then avoiding any type of interception snowball effectively. Throw a pick, screw it, move on from it, but don't let it lead to more interceptions. So Georgia fans, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you're a Texas fan, we have a video out of Quinn Ewers and his keys against the Georgia defense. Georgia fans, feel free to go watch that as well. And we're just a big SEC quarterback hub. We talk all things SEC quarterback. So if you like that type of content and this is your first time seeing the channel, please consider subscribing. It helps us grow. Like the video, share, all that stuff. Again, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Peace.